Notching or drilling joists may seem like a minor adjustment, but it significantly reduces their structural capacity, and in the worst cases, can compromise the entire floor or ceiling system. Timber joists are engineered to carry specific loads across their full depth. Removing material creates a weak point, much like cutting halfway through a wooden plank. It may hold a little weight, but under normal load, it bends, cracks, or snaps. Incorrect notching, especially on the tension face at the bottom, or oversized holes in high-stress zones can lead to excessive deflection, noticeable vibration, cracking in finishes, and, critically, an increased risk of partial or sudden collapse. Beyond safety, getting it wrong means failing to meet Part A, structure, of the UK building regulations, potentially resulting in costly remedial work, project delays, or enforcement action. For anyone involved in construction, renovation, or service installation, understanding the rules for notches and holes isn't optional. It's a fundamental part of working safely, legally, and professionally. A joist is a horizontal structural member, typically made of timber, steel, or engineered wood, that supports floors, ceilings, or roofs by spanning between load-bearing walls or beams. Its primary role is to safely transfer live loads, people, furniture, and dead loads, the weight of the structure itself, down to the supporting walls or primary beams below. Crucially, a joist's strength depends heavily on its depth. Height: the deeper the joist, the greater its ability to resist bending and deflection under load. Think of a joist like a bridge. Its full height gives it the stiffness and capacity to carry weight without sagging. If you cut into it, especially on the top or bottom edges, you reduce that effective depth, dramatically weakening its load-bearing ability. Even a small notch in the wrong place can slash its strength by 30% or more, turning a reliable structural element into a hidden hazard. That's why UK standards strictly control where and how joists can be modified. Here's the golden rule for notches and holes in timber joists in the UK, and it's all about where and how much you cut. First, notches, those are cuts on the top edge of the joist, are only allowed in the outer thirds of the span. That means if you split the joist into 3 equal parts, you can notch only in the first and last sections. Never, ever notch the middle third. That's where the joist works hardest, and cutting there can seriously weaken it. And how deep can you go? No more than 12.5% of the joist's total depth, that's 1/8, or 0.125 times the depth. So on a standard 200 mm deep joist, your notch can't be deeper than 25 mm. Now for holes, used for running pipes or cables, these must only be drilled in the middle third of the span, right through the center of the joist's depth. The maximum hole diameter is 25% of the joist depth, so again, on a 200 mm joist, that's a 50 mm hole max. And if you're drilling more than one hole, they must be spaced at least 3 hole diameters apart, so 3 times 50 mm equals 150 mm between centers. Stick to these rules, and you keep the joist strong, safe, and fully compliant with UK building regulations. Break them, and you risk deflection, damage, or worse. When in doubt, don't guess. Check the survey, consult a pro, or leave it alone. When it comes to notching a timber joist in the UK, location is everything, because notch in the wrong spot, and you risk serious structural weakness. You're only allowed to notch between 7% and 25% of the joist span from each end. That means if you picture a joist stretching from wall to wall, you measure in 7% from the support, like the brick wall or beam, and stop at 25% in. That's your safe notching zone. Why not right at the end? Because the last 7% near the support is critical for bearing. The joist needs full depth there to transfer load safely into the wall. And the middle third of the span, roughly 33% to 66%, is completely off-limits for notching, as this is where bending forces are highest. Cut here, and you dramatically reduce strength. So, visualize your joist, mark 25% in from each end, then back off another 7% from the very edge. The zone between those two marks, that's your only safe place to notch. Stick to this, and you'll stay within NHBC and building regulations guidance. Go outside it, and you're compromising safety. When you do notch a joist, and only in the allowed zone, the maximum depth is strictly limited to 12.5% of the joist's total depth. That's 0.125 times the depth, or simply 1/8 of the joist's height. For example, on a 200 mm deep joist, your notch can't be deeper than 25 mm, about the width of a small matchbox or the depth of a standard wall plug. On a 150 mm joist, the max notch drops to just 18 mm, less than the thickness of a smartphone. To picture it, imagine taking a shallow, rectangular bite out of the top edge of the joist, no deeper than the width of your little finger. That's all you're allowed. Go deeper, and you start removing critical material that resists bending, which can lead to sagging floors or worse. Remember, even a small overcut can reduce strength by 20% or more. So measure twice, notch once, and always stay within the 12.5% rule. Stay in the safe zone. When drilling holes in timber joists, for pipes, cables, or ducts, you must only drill in the middle third of the joist span. Imagine splitting the joist into 3 equal sections, left third, middle third, right third. Holes are only allowed in that central section, it's your safe zone. Why? Because the middle third is where bending stresses are lowest in the top and bottom edges, and drilling through the center, the neutral axis, has the least impact on structural strength. Conversely, drilling in the first or last third, near the supports, is strictly banned. These end zones carry high shear forces, and holes here can lead to splitting, cracking, or sudden failure under load. So remember, picture your joist in 3 parts, holes go only in the middle one. No exceptions. Stick to this rule, and your services run safely without compromising the floor above, or the people walking on it. When drilling holes in timber joists under UK standards, precision is critical. Holes are only permitted in the middle third of the span, specifically between 25% and 40% of the span from one end, and symmetrically between 60% and 75% from the other end, avoiding high-stress zones near supports in the extreme center. Every hole must be drilled on the neutral axis, dead center through the joist's depth, where bending stresses are lowest. The maximum hole diameter is 25% of the joist's depth, e.g., 50 mm in a 200 mm joist, and holes must be spaced at least 3 times their diameter apart, center, to prevent localized weakness. Imagine a joist split into 3 equal parts, only the middle segment is safe, and even within it, the true safe corridor starts at 25% and ends at 40%, with every hole centered vertically and properly spaced, because getting this wrong doesn't just break the rules, it risks floor failure, deflection, or long-term structural damage. What's right and what's wrong? Let's describe real-world scenarios so you can see them in your mind. Incorrect examples, these break the rules. A large hole drilled near the support, imagine a 60 mm hole bored just 200 mm from the wall in a 3-meter joist. That's in the first third, where shear forces are high, this could cause the joist to split or fail. A notch halfway across the span, picture a cut taken out of the top edge right in the middle of the joist. That's deep in the middle third, where bending stress peaks. This notch drastically reduces load capacity and risks floor sagging. Multiple holes close together, think of 3 40 mm holes drilled only 50 mm apart in a row. With edges less than 3 diameters apart, the timber between them is too weak, it's like perforating the joist, making it prone to cracking. A notch deeper than 1/8 of the joist depth, on a 175 mm joist, a 35 mm deep notch is twice the allowed depth, max is 22 mm. That's like chewing through the backbone of the joist, far too aggressive and unsafe. Correct examples, these follow UK guidance. A small, shallow notch near the end zone, visualize a tidy 20 mm deep notch in a 200 mm joist, placed precisely 400 mm from the end of a 3.6 m span, so between 7% and 25% in. It's modest, in the right zone, and respects the 12.5% depth limit. A single hole in the central region with good spacing, picture a 45 mm hole drilled dead center in the middle third of the joist, at least 50 mm from top and bottom edges, with no other holes nearby, plenty of solid timber around it to carry the load safely. These examples show that compliance isn't about avoiding cuts altogether, it's about making smart, controlled, code-compliant ones. When in doubt, consult local standards and guidance, or a structural engineer, because safety is built into every measurement. When you're on site and need to modify joists, following a few clear do's and don'ts can mean the difference between a safe, compliant job and a serious structural risk. Do. Check the joist depth first. You can't apply the 12.5% notch or 25% hole rule without knowing the exact size. Measure the total span and clearly mark the zones. Use chalk or tape to show the outer thirds, 4 notches, and the middle third, 4 holes, so everyone knows where it's safe to cut. Use sharp, proper-sized drilling tools to avoid splintering or over-drilling, and always drill straight and level through the center line. Notify a structural engineer if your service run needs a hole or notch bigger than the rules allow. Better to get approval than risk a dangerous shortcut. Don't ever notch the bottom of a joist. The bottom edge is in tension, and removing material there dramatically weakens it, like cutting the string on a bow. Cut or drill within the last 7% near bearings or supports. This zone carries heavy shear loads, and damage here can lead to sudden failure. Run large pipes, ducts, or bundles of cables through structural timbers without engineering approval. Just because it fits doesn't mean it's safe. Remember, joists aren't just timber, they're load-bearing lifelines. Treat them with respect, plan ahead, and when in doubt, stop and ask. Safety isn't just about the people on site today, it's about everyone who walks on that floor for decades to come. Always follow the UK notching and holing rules, every single time, on every job. These aren't suggestions, they're legal requirements under the Building Regulations. Part A, Structure, designed to keep floors strong and people safe. If you ever need to go outside these limits, whether for a larger pipe, an unusual layout, or an old joist in poor condition, document the deviation clearly and get formal approval from a qualified structural engineer. And never guess. When in doubt, stop and ask building control or an engineer before making a single cut. Because at the end of the day, proper cutting equals safe floors, safe structures, and peace of mind. Think of each joist as a backbone of the building. Once weakened, the whole structure feels it. Treat it with the care it deserves, and you'll help ensure the home or building stands strong for generations.